Welcome back to Just Scribble for another episode of Planner Pages. So in this series, I am going through the different spreads in Plans by Just Scribble to talk to you guys a little bit about the intent behind the spread and then give you some ideas on how you could use those spreads. And even if you don't use plans, a lot of the ideas that I'm going through in the Planner Pages series can be applied to other planners, your bullet journal, etc. So in this episode, we are going to be going over the habit tracker pages. So Plans is a bundled planner and it is organized by quarter. So your habit trackers for the first quarter, January, February, March, are in the first quarter section of your planner, along with the months, days, and weeks of that quarter. And then your habit trackers for the second quarter, for April, May, and June, are in the second quarter section. And then the habit trackers for Q3 and Q4 are in the second book. In the A5 planner, the habit tracker goes across the page like this. It has a section for you to list your habits down, and then it has a grid section at the bottom that you can use for graphing and other things. And then it has both weekly habit tracking as well as daily habit tracking. So you can track habits that you do weekly versus habits that you track daily. So this is how it looks in the A5 planner. This is how it looks in the A6 planner. Because it is smaller, you can't go across. There's not enough spaces. So it goes across this way. So this is volume 2. So you have July, August, September, and then a grid section there. Versus in the A5, you have them on individual pages and then a full grid page. And then in our newest planner, so our B6 size that we just launched in May, the habit trackers likewise go across the page, similar to the A6, but we did make a couple of improvements. We did darken the grid throughout the B6 planner, and that's something you're going to see in the 2026 planners as well. I also added shading to the weeklies so that it was a little bit easier to see your weekly tracker section versus your daily tracker section. And so that's something you'll see in 2026 as well. The function is the same no matter which of these you're using. It's just that the layout is a little different because the page sizes are a little bit different. So, intent behind this spread. The intent behind the spread was to provide habit trackers. That is really the only reason. I know a lot of people in the planner community really like to track their habits, and so I wanted to make sure that there was a dedicated space in Plans to track your habits. And when I designed it, I wanted to ensure that you had plenty of space to track what you wanted to track, that you could track weekly and daily habits, and also that it was flexible enough that you could use it in different ways if you didn't want to use it for habit tracking. The other thing that was really important to me in Plans design, that the habit trackers were interspersed in the planner. They weren't all at the front of the planner. So they are with the quarter that they belong to, so that you're not flipping back and forth in the planner as much, and so that it's more in your face. I find that we use spreads in our planner more if we see them regularly, and so having it in the section you're actually working in and living in, I think makes more sense. So like I said, it is within the quarter section of the planner. So in each volume, you'll have 2 sets of habit trackers. One in the first quarter that makes up that book and one in the second quarter that makes up that book. Hopefully that makes sense. So like I said, the premise behind adding the habit trackers was truly to give habit trackers, but there are other ways that you can use habit trackers. And so I wanted to go through a few examples of different ways you can use it. The first is actually for habits, or the first example. I made a sample page with a few different ways that you could use this to track habits. So the first thing up here is tracking habits with a dot marker. And so you can just use a dot marker to add dots to the days that you actually completed your habits. The next one is doing a sort of Zentangle, which a lot of people like to do. I'm not very good at it, so it's not the best example visually, but you get the idea. The next section is using check marks and X's so that you could check mark when you do something and you could X it off when you don't do it. And then like I shared in the A5 over here, there's a grid section at the bottom, like you can see there. And that was an intentional design to allow you to build graphs if you wanted to. Now in the A6 and the B6 planners, the graph section is a little bit smaller. In the A6, you only have 3 grids across, and in the A5, it was 8, and in the B6, you have 7 grids, but it was designed so that you could use that to build a graph if you wanted. So I did an example here with steps so that you could number your steps. So these are in thousands, 4,000 to 10,000. Write the dates down this way. Tyrian Designs sells sticker strips that are dated 1 through 31 that come in a 4mm grid. And so you could get those and you can lay them down, or you could use the dates that are up here. but you can use that as a place to graph. So you could have all of your habits up here, and then you could graph something down here. You could graph this like this with a line graph. You could do a bar graph, all sorts of different things. So that was kind of a general habits one. I also did one that just shows different ways you could track your sleep and your step. So in this one, I put 0 through 11 to cover hours of sleep and also steps. So it's hours and then thousands for steps. And then down here in the little grid section, I wrote my goals and my symbols. So sleep had the dot with the line that was bigger, and then steps had the smaller dot with the line. And then I had my goals for each of those, and then I graphed the results. And so you can use this top part also for a graph, and you can use this bottom part for notes, for goals, etc. You could also do this in different colors. So you could have your steps here. You could also have your sleep here, and then you could use different colors for the quality of your sleep. So for like the amount of time that you're in REM. And so you could cover all three things: the quality of your sleep, the hours of your sleep, and also your steps. And you could do combined line graphs like this, or again, you could do bar graphs. So you could bar graph, like highlight up your hours of sleep and do a color code for the quality, and then line graph your steps on top of that. And so you can just kind of layer graphs on top of it. Those are just two things that you could graph, but that is another idea. The next thing that you could track is your mood and anxiety. So I did this in a sort of different way. I added a little deco, so I used some washi to divide the habit tracker into two sections. So that way the mood and the anxiety would be kind of separate. And I added some little smiley faces just for fun for deco at the bottom. And then I listed out different moods. And then I listed out anxiety levels, and then two different ways that you could fill them out. So you could use a dot marker and you could mark your mood that way, or you could fill in the boxes with a pen like that. And then for your anxiety, you could use a bar graph, or you could dot where your anxiety level landed. You could use the habit tracker for adulting, like recurring tasks if you want. You could use it for school, use it to track your kiddos' habits and things for your children. You could use it as a cleaning tracker. So you could list all of your cleaning things that you want to do every month, and then you could mark the days that you did it, or the things that are only weekly, like cleaning the toilets. You could mark which weeks you did this. You could divide it by room. You could add annual tasks to the quarter that they apply to the month that you need to do them, like flipping your ceiling fans or pressure washing the driveway, things like that. You could add a quote or some deco like the washi I added to just add a little bit to the page, and you could use it to track your cleaning. The next thing you can use it for, and actually one of the things that we've used ours for a lot in the past, is for finances. So you can list out all of your bills that you have for the month. You can use the weekly section to write the dollar amount of the bill, whether that's a fixed bill or a variable. So for a fixed bill, you could have the amount already written in, and for the variable, you could add the amount when you pay it. And then you can dot the dates that they're due and then check off when you actually pay them. And so you could use it to track your finances. You could also use it to track books that you're reading. So you could track the books that you've read and how long it took for you to read each book. You could add a section for a wish list or recommendations to keep track of that. You could add a little bit of deco, really customize it and make it as pretty as you wanted or as simple as you wanted. I know there's a lot of people that keep reading logs, and I know a lot of people try to keep an actual reading journal, and I've noticed that some people struggle to keep up with that. Sometimes it's just too much. And so this would give you the ability to track those things that you would want to put into a reading journal, but without having to add another journal or another planner to your lineup. The next idea is to use it for project management. And this could be all sorts of projects. You could use it for work projects, work tasks, home improvement, gardening, whatever it is that you wanted. In this example, I was doing a backyard sort of remodel situation. And so you can list out the things that you need to do for the project. You could list out the spending for the project, and then you could mark when those things got done, how long they took, etc. And you could use the grid section over here for a to-buy list if you wanted. Lots of different ways you could use this for project management. I know a lot of people do a similar thing with your gardening. So you could keep track of the plants that you needed to plant and the vegetables, etc. You could keep track of your watering, your fertilizing, all of the things on your monthly habit trackers. And then the last idea that I had is to track a routine. In this instance, I did a skincare routine. So here I have my daily skincare routine and then my weekly/monthly skincare routine. You could mark the days that you did each step in your skincare routine. If you had things that you wanted to do monthly or weekly, you could dot them here if they're weekly, so you could show which week that you did them. And if they're things that you only wanted to do monthly or a few times a month and not necessarily weekly, you could dot the actual days that you did it. So you could track, for example, when you cleaned your makeup brushes last. And then you could use the grid section for notes. So if your esthetician gave you some brand recommendations, you could put those there. Or if you bought a new product and you liked it or you didn't like it, you could make notes about it. So that way you would have something to reference. Of course, this is just one routine, but you could do this for really any routine that you have in your life. Those are my ideas on different ways that you can use the habit tracker and a little chat about why I included a habit tracker in plans and why I included them in the way that I did. If you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to put them down below and I will definitely get back with you. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss future videos, including the next episode of Planner Pages. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video and don't forget to just scribble.